Welcome, everyone, and thanks so much for tuning into our first episode of Relearn. I'm Kelly Shea, and I am a DEI PR professional, and I am so excited to be here with my co-host, Mega Jewel. Mega, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yes, I am based in Southern California, and we had met over PRSA, which is a Public Relations Society of America, and we connected over. Oh, wait, I didn't even introduce myself. I'm a communicator as well. I work in PR and social, and I'm just super excited to do this with you because, Kelly, it's been a year since we even talked about this project, and our hope is to share our stories and also bring in our guests' stories to really ensure that people have the opportunity to chat with ourselves and each other about the things that we need to relearn, because things that
Yep.
we were taught in our childhood, even in young, adulthood or whatever, doesn't really apply to today's time.
Yeah, we're so excited, and we hope that you'll tune into our first episode. We're going to dive deeper into the why we're doing this, what inspired us. And then following, we'll have a lot of guests to enlighten us on different topics that we feel like we've been relearning over the years and continue to relearn so that we can be happier in our professional and personal lives.
Awesome. So we'll kick it off to our first episode. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn or follow us on Twitter or other social media. We'll link it in the comments and description below.
So what we're trying to accomplish with Relearn is to really inspire growth, particular for diverse individuals like ourselves in the US. Mega, do you want to quickly share how we met?
Yeah, so the world works in funny ways where we were doing some projects with an organization called PRSA Silicon Valley. It's a public relations group. And you were doing a show or some sort or moderating an event. I was like, oh, I want to talk to you, And when we started talking, we were really getting into like the root of different topics from like our childhood, the way we were brought up, the way that our parents taught us X, Y, and Z, how we look at money, how we look at relationships and friendships. Like it was just so powerful. And the fact that you work at HP, I work at Bospar, a PR tech firm. It's like we have this capacity to be able to share our story and help the next generation of folks understand like, you're not alone, right? Like we've like pioneered a lot of this stuff and other generations have pioneered this stuff. Like now you can really grow from that.
100%. And I love the story. I think about learning on our own is that you told the story where you're at Costco and you were talking to your mom about you were interviewing for your first job. And you're like, Mom, what are some tips you could share with me about interviewing? And you said, and all she could tell you was, Mega, you
Pray
just
about
have to
it.
pray. Exactly. And there's obviously nothing wrong with praying, but I think it just shows that as first gen Asian Americans, it dawned on us that we have to learn a lot on our own and really set our own paths. And some of us, don't have parents or sometimes siblings to coach us. And it's not their fault. I mean, they had to come to this country. They really have to pick up whatever job they could find and survive. And there's tremendous strength in that. Or sometimes it's, what they're teaching us may not be very relevant for us to succeed, I think, in this country. So I think for me, the inspiration for the podcast is really about equal footing. How do we give equitable access to knowledge where we could all be happier and more successful in our professional and personal lives? But Mega, I mean, I guess I'd love to understand, for you to share what can listeners expect from this podcast.
It's to know what to expect. It comes to like what our mission is and where our goals are, right? It is not to tell you or listeners what to do. It is to show people like, I felt like I was doing the splits. One was in Indonesian culture, one was an American culture, and I didn't know where to do, what to do, where to go, how to be as an individual. And so the expectation here is to listen to our stories, listen to the people that we bring onto this podcast, and be able to go, you know what? Like, I'm not alone. I can figure out and ask for help. Being able to craft your own path and make your life your own. It's really just about like, what noise do you gotta, like, what noise do you have to filter out to figure out like, what's best for me, what's best for my life. Those are the expectations that we want to be able to share through our stories and through our friends' stories and the people that we bring in to go, you got this, you could do it.
Yeah, and I think I'm excited for the guests that we'll be bringing in to share their stories, because it's not just, I think our story is only a small part of this nation's story, but really excited for what's to come, and for you to talk, like you said before, the relationships with ourselves, with money, with work, and with our significant others and even friends. So definitely excited for what's to come.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, Kelly, it comes down to, you said we're both storytellers. I know it, but I want to know and share it with the listeners. Like, what is your story? Like, what was that conversation that we had to really
mhm.
spark up this idea of, dude, we got to share this with the world?
Yeah, and I think, and I want to get to your story too, but I'm happy to share my story. I'm a first generation Asian American, Chinese American to be, specific, and I'm also a first generation college graduate. And I'm very, very proud of these things. But obviously, there's a lot of people who helped me got there. But I think I can't share my story without sharing my parents' story. My parents are Chinese, but my mom was born in Vietnam. My dad was born in Indonesia. We bonded over that when we first chatted. They were refugees who were forced to leave their birthlands. They fled to China and eventually migrated to the US. My parents didn't speak English when they got here. So I remember when I was little, I would go to the Sprint store or the grocery stores or DMV and translate for them if my older sister wasn't around. So I pretty much lived this entire life trying to figure things out for myself and helping them whenever I can. And along the way, I had many people, like my aunt and my cousins that we lived with for a little while, who gave me advice on how to excel in school, how to apply for college. And of course, when I started working, I had amazing mentors who taught me how to be successful in the corporate world. My past and my parents are very integral to my story, and they are the inspiration behind this podcast. I mean, it's not only to share, I think, the immigrant story, but also really give us a voice in America. I hope our listeners can connect with us and our guests. I hope it can give them a sense of belonging, something you said before, like not feeling alone. But I'll get off my soapbox, Mega. I would
Well,
love to learn about your story and what's the inspiration for you to co-create this with me.
so as a former journalist, I have to ask some follow-up questions, right? Like, you talked about your parents' story, and you talked about, I mean, we're just basically like at the surface level, because I'm sure there's a lot
Mhm.
of decisions, a lot of like sacrifices that were made there. But I'm curious, you shared a little bit of where your parents were, where you were at, and then I'm curious about where you're at now, because that contrast is probably very important to share, because it's like, how do you get from here past? How do you get from now and then and beyond?
My goodness, how do I think from immigrating here to not speaking a word of English other than apple and hi, to now being a storyteller. I really do think it's the people along the way that gave me amazing coaching. And I think this is what this podcast is all about, right? If we didn't have those people in our lives to share with us what's been successful for them, um, I don't think I would have been be able to be who I am today. And that includes my parents who were new to this country, to people that were born in this country who are white Americans or Asian Americans or Black Americans, right? So I definitely find that it ultimately is about the people around me.
Yeah. No,
Megas.
what is it?
Oh, no. I feel like I've been talking the whole time. So I'm just curious to hear your story, your parents' story.
Yeah, no, I'm getting somewhat emotional here, because it's like, the reason why we're doing this, it's we talk about DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what that looks like. we're all at the end of the day people who care about their loved ones, their friends and family, their pets. You know, we need food and we need shelter. We have so many commonalities across the different racial groups and whatever. And there seems to be this I don't know what is causing the divide, but I don't know what to do but this, to be able to go, you know, we're all very, very similar. We're all very connected. And we can see that with the pandemic and how one area could just, you know, affect the others. And it's time to be kind to each other. It's time to be more kind with ourselves. And it's, you know, it starts with us. It starts with who we are and what we do, and how our actions create a ripple effect in our communities and subsequently other communities. I during Christmas 2021, I told my family, like, I really do appreciate their sacrifice. You know, I have 3 generations in that particular room, my mother's generation, my grandma, and then like my auntie's generations and stuff. And I just wanted to thank them because of their sacrifice to move us to the United States was a monumental one. We immigrated like back when from China to Indonesia. And then my grandparents went through like the whole Dutch colonization, and then like, you know, the whole liberation of Indonesia's democratic stuff, like all this different political like aspects that contributes a lot to how they perceive things and how they, you know, interact with their culture and how they see their own culture. And so when I grew up in Indonesia, it was very different. It was very like a combination of like Chinese culture, Dutch culture, and it's just like Indonesian culture, whatever that may look like. But it was very like you can't ask questions, you can't question your authority, you have to follow the rules and directions. And so that caused me to be this very like timid rule follower. Like everything that is told to me is factual. I don't question it and just go. I struggled. I
can relate to that.
Yeah.
I can still relate to that.
And
it affects how we work too. Yeah.
The way that we are working, the way that we are perceived, the way that we like speak and act and think, like it permeates through a lot of stuff that childhood like upbringing, right? But the things that like contrast wise, like I told them I was like very grateful for their sacrifice, because for the first time in my life, you know, 30 years of life, like I can now carve out my own path and define what success looks like for me in the different capacities of money, of career, of family, of friends. And before, it was just this like I had to equate success to how much money I made. I had to equate like, you know, I had to be quote unquote graceful in order for someone to like me, to marry me. And
right.
Dude, Kelly, when I
there's a standard.
Yeah. There's this like
just put us in a box
that you had to live up to. And if you didn't live up to it, you weren't good enough. And I remember in college or in like college, when I started wanting to go into like communications, I told my paternal grandparents and I was like, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm passionate about. Luckily, my mom was like all about passion and focusing on that. And they told me like, you're going to fail.
Wow.
And like
why is that? Because you're an Asian American, or do they want you to pursue a different field?
I don't think they saw me as an Asian American per se. I think they wanted the best for me, and what they defined as best at the time was business, lawyer stuff, medical stuff. Like those were the industries and jobs that were deemed as quote unquote successful or safe in that capacity. So I don't think that they saw me any different than like who they are, but there were times, you know, because I lived in both countries, that I didn't belong in Indonesia because I was too American. But like
Mm,
I started questioning people, and I started challenging the status quo. Like, why aren't we doing this over this? And this could be improved by doing this. Like, they're like, no, it is the way that it is. Like, you're too American. Whereas in America, you're like, you're trying to like fit in, but you're just like,
right.
uh, I don't ask the right questions, or I'm not aggressive enough. I don't, the squeaky wheel gets the grease type of thing. Like,
Yes.
I couldn't fit that bill. It was just
Yeah.
so hard,
Like where's our place?
yeah. Like, I mean, promotion after promotion was just like handed to someone else because I don't know, does this resonate with you? Like, head down, work hard, you'll eventually
Oh,
get the promotion, like,
100%.
I don't know, 20 years later or something.
Right. 100%. And I've seen that in our families too, right? This still happens, whether it's the generation before us or the current generation. And I think you touch on so many themes I want to get into during the podcast. You touch on confidence and figuring out your own path, right? Like that doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of introspection. It takes people that are lifting you up to give you that confidence.
Absolutely.
You touched on pressure and expectations and putting in a box of what you should be doing and what you should not be doing. And I think these are all the things I think we want to explore during this podcast. And you even talking about changing careers, right? I know people, some of my friends that went into the medical field because that's what their parents wanted. It's a stable job, it's well respected, but it wasn't their passion. And they left, and instead of pursuing something they ultimately love. And I think that's so brave of them, because I know so many people who just clung on to that staple job even though they didn't love it. And I want to explore that as well. So I'm excited to be digging into these themes during
Yeah.
this podcast.
So the one thing that, if we could talk to our listeners and have them chime in, like, this podcast is for us, like, as a community. We would love to know, like, what are you challenged with? What are things that's
Mm-hmm.
going through your mind? What are those conversations that's happening, like, at your kitchen table, or at the phone, like during phone calls? Because, you know, we have the opportunity to create the future that we want to create. You
Yep.
know, I think that is a powerful thing. And to take ownership and empowerment of that, I think it's for once, it's like you talk about confidence, like, let's own it and let's do it. Let's kind of like reverse engineering from what our goals are, and then, like, let's figure out how we get there, not only through conversations, but what can we do after we listen to these conversations? What can
Yeah.
we do in our communities? What can we do in our like small groups of friends, or whatever? Like, I think those are really important things to do too.
And I think I'm really excited for me to learn, right? For me to learn from the guests that we're going to have, because I'm still on my own learning journey here, whether it's continue to be more confident or continue to speak up and pursue what I love. And, I'm excited for that.
I am too. I'm really excited for what's to come with you. And I don't know what it looks like for me. Sometimes there's always this like imposter syndrome and like just doubt, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the journey. Like, just looking back at the past 20, 30 years or whatever since coming here in 1998 during the Jakarta riots, like, it's just been this up and down process of just like unimaginable like emotions and feelings, but I wouldn't have it any other way, because
No.
it's made us who we are. And
Yes.
it's like you talked about, like, people helping others, like, it's helped us like understand how to help others, pay it forward,
Mhm.
and to
And be
really
really
cultivate.
resilient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited for that, for this opportunity. So yeah,
Me
chime in.
too. And where can listeners find us, Mega? Where are we going to be in the virtual world?
So for our fantastic followers, this is our first, ever pilot program, and we ask for your patience. But for us, you can follow us on our social media platforms, on our LinkedIn, especially. We're very like active on that. We'll put together, our social media platforms on Instagram,
Mm.
Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn for sure. And we're excited for you to listen to this podcast and really chime in and ask us questions and challenge us and like give us some recommendations on who you want to hear, because this is our show. This is not just the Kelly and Mega show. It's our show. It's our community show.
Yep. Well, I am really excited to partner with you on this, and I can't wait for more to come.
Yes. We'll see you in our next episode. Bye now.
Yay. Thank you.